Good morning, Mr. Speaker. My name is Richard O'Leary, and I spent 33 years as a Manchester police officer, ending with the rank of Deputy Chief of Police. I am adamantly against the death penalty. And here briefly are my reasons why. First, I don't believe we have the right under any circumstances other than immediate self-defense to take a life. No matter which religion we think about, from A to Z, one of the major philosophies is, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not take a life. Once the criminal has been subdued, arrested, segregated from society, and rendered defenseless, I cannot see where the state has any compelling interest in executing him. It's simply wrong. Second, the criminal justice system is not perfect, and innocent people can be killed. Take the example of the man from Texas, Cameron Todd Willingham. Willingham was executed after being convicted for killing his 3 children in a fire it was believed he set. The only evidence was based on shaky arson science. Science that we no longer use today. Under today's science, Willingham would be alive and a free man right now. To date, the Innocent Project has freed over 160 death row inmates who were wrongly convicted across our country. How do you bring anybody back who has been executed and you later find out was innocent? You can't. Third, how can we really decide which categories of humans merit the death penalty? I'd like to share a bit of my own story for a moment on how I came to my decision. My first wife died when she was relatively young, and I remarried a lady whose husband had died when he was relatively young. So between us, we had 6 kids who are now between 35 and 40. 3 are teachers. 1 at 3rd grade, 1 at Central High School, who was also the baseball coach, and 1 who teaches kindergarten. I have a daughter who's a nurse in Rhode Island, and a son who is a police officer in Manchester. One of my sons works as a chef, and another is a tech man at Southern New Hampshire University. As you look at the carnage across the country, all of these occupations have been involved in mass shootings. Think of teachers down at Sandy Hook in Connecticut. In a recent shooting, there was a football coach. He was there when the shooting occurred because that's where he works. The policemen showed up quickly as they could, probably 2 minutes later, but the football coach had died. How does my son, the teacher and baseball coach at Central, compared to my other son, who is a Manchester police officer? How do you make a judgment on whose life is more important? Is a policeman more important than a nurse, than a teacher, than a tech man at a college? If I'm a lawmaker or on a jury, how do I choose for which kind of victim the predator should get death and for which kind he shouldn't? I don't think we should be making these kinds of distinctions among victims. Every murder is heinous to the one who lost a loved one. Fourth, the death penalty does not deter people from murdering. These people are drug addicts and crackheads most of the time. Are they really going to stop and reflect on their actions ahead of time and think, I might get killed if I do this, so I better not? That's the furthest thing from their mind. I've had the opportunity to speak with a couple of these folks. I asked them, do you know what you were doing and you're going to face the death penalty or life in prison? None of the accused knew the answer. They just acted without thinking. On the other hand, premeditated murderers just think they're too smart and will never get caught. And lastly, the death penalty turns murderers into celebrities. And that's not good for the family members of the victim. Today, everybody knows Michael Addison's name. I hate to use that name. The guy he killed, Officer Mike Briggs, was top shelf. He was a standout policeman. He was excellent. But he's gone now. So who gets remembered? Michael Addison, because of years and years and years of appeals. But notice how nobody talks about Cleo Roy. Cleo Roy killed Manchester police officer Ralph Miller in the early 70s when I first became a policeman. Nobody killed Ralph Miller in the early 70s in New Hampshire, and he got life in prison. He's pretty much remained a nobody for 50 years. And that's okay. For being fortunate to talk to a lot of family members of murder victims, they were not interested in revenge. They were not interested in an eye for an eye. They just wanted justice by putting the guy away, so they didn't have to keep coming and being reminded of their loss every year for 15 or 20 years every time another appeal happened. What does the death penalty do? Nothing. It takes another human life for no good reason. We don't need the death penalty. Life in prison, life in a 6 by 10 foot cell with your freedom forever taken from you is adequate protection, adequate punishment. It protects society and allows for a possibility of rehabilitation. That's what jail is supposed to do. Please support the Criminal Justice Committee's ought to pass recommendation on Senate Bill 593. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Does a member you have a question?
Sure.
Representative Welper, you may inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for taking my question. Would you agree that one sentenced to life in prison without parole retains the ability to kill for all those years that they're in prison and puts prison guards and other prisoners at risk of the same crime for which he's convicted?
No. The reason why is because I've been up to the state prison many times before. They have never had an untimely death like that at the state prison. The guards up there are top shelf. The rules of incarceration are top shelf. And I've never heard of a prison guard in New Hampshire being killed.
Member yield to another question?
Sure.
Member yields. Representative Sterling, you may inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative, for taking my question. We've heard two representatives come up and testify as to the cost of incarceration and appeal for a convicted murderer for the death penalty. As a police officer, what price would you put on a dead police officer?
You can't put a price on a dead police officer or any of these fine citizens that happen to be killed in their line of duty here. The only one is a police officer killed in line of duty. Thankfully, we're lucky in New Hampshire. Very rarely happens.
Question before the House on the adoption of the committee report about to pass. Chair recognizes the member from